And our topic today is the topic of what we call our conditioned tendencies. Some of you might know that as by when we're under a threat, either perceived or real, that we'll have a certain kind of reflex. There's a historic reflex that comes in to take care of us in some way. And we also want to talk about how we want to blend with the conditioned tendency, these strategies that we have for survival. So before we really begin this piece of it, just make sure that you're all muted. That will be helpful. And we're going to do some centering practices. And we start with the centering practices because it is really, this is the place in which when we do have our CTs, it is one of the skills that we can develop over time. We recognize we are in a reactive state. We recognize that we're more in our immature self. We recognize that this history has come forward and starting to work with us or work through us. And we want to bring ourselves back into the present moment to be open, connected. Present, open, and connected. So if you can and you're willing, let's go ahead and stand. If not, sitting's fine. It's really fabulous to be with a whole bunch of you from all over the world, actually, at this moment. So when we center ourselves, we're going to work on 4 dimensions. These are the 4 dimensions that all living things have. These are the dimensions of length. We have width. There's a depth to us, and then there's an organizing principle. And in the body, in our biology, our soma, organizing principle is our center of gravity, our belly center. There's a heart center for sure, as well as an eye center, but we organize from our belly center. And in the existential, or how we're existing state, that the organizing principle is our purpose. In other words, we come into contact with what are you wanting to do on this earth walk? What is your purpose for being here? And how do you set your sails in that direction? So let's do this. Let's come into our length and just settle into length and not doing anything other than just feeling yourself as the human animal that can stand on 2 feet. Our whole ventral side is open, our heart center is open, our belly center is open, our pelvic center is open. Our hands are free to use, they're not on the ground. We have this vision, we can look across the plains, look across the mountains. And with your sense of embodied imagination, our feeling, our sensing, come to the crown of your head. The crown of your head up here. If it's easier to get there by touching it, do that. And let that be open. Those bones up there in the skull actually can move. They can move very subtly and minutely, but just feel that you're going to open up to the heavens. And while you're doing that, let your attention drop to the soles of your feet and feel, sense, or imagine that sensation of your feet on the ground, and that area is open too. So we're a bridge. We're a bridge to heaven, and we're a bridge to earth, the human form. So in this way, we're straightening. Now at the same time, we're settling. And what do I mean by settling? I mean that we can go to these usual suspects that will often grip when we're under some kind of pressure, which may be your eyes. Relax your eyes, come behind your eyes. And see if you can relax this eye band. And you'll know when you're behind your eyes and your eyes start to relax because your peripheral vision opens. When your eyes are relaxed in this way, we're not transferring any tension from the eyes to the brain through the optic nerve. So actually relaxing your eyes helps the brain, the organ of the brain, relax. Let's check here at the jaw band, and let your teeth have a little separation. In other words, unlock the hinge, let the chin be soft. Let's take a deep breath, and at the deep breath, bring your shoulders to your ears, bring your shoulders up here, release, out breath, and drop. The system's designed that the mass of the body, that is the muscular system, can rest on the skeletal system. And feel that, sense that, or imagine that. That your muscles can rest on your bones. The system's designed that your breath is low in your abdomen. It's not high or rapid in the chest. It's actually low and rhythmic in your abdomen. And once the breath starts to drop and relax, you'll see that on the in-breath, the abdomen will slightly go out and the exhale will go in. That goes against all these pictures of people on the cover of magazines that have really taut bellies and six packs. But actually we're built to let that abdomen go out and then it'll recede in. And that helps make space for the organs to us. Now, let's come into the pelvic bowl. This is the place, again, like the shoulder girdle. There's a lot going on here. A lot of muscles, ligaments, tendons, sphincter muscles, hormones moving through there. And just release there. If you're not sure that you're released in your sit bones or your butt cheeks, you can go ahead and just grip there and then release. Letting your weight go down through your knees into your feet. So this is the place where we have our feet on the ground. We're among all other living things, humans and everything else. And we have a spiritual and moral vision about our life. We have that possibility. Now let's come to our width. And with our width, let's start in our feet and feel the balance between left and right. If you're not sure of any of these places, you can kind of go left and right, sway back and forth till you find that even place. Feel that balance at the knees. We're going to be coming up now. Bringing your attention to the hips. You might be finding you're really always resting on one foot or the other. Just see if you can balance that out. We come up to the torso. And in fact, in the torso, if we take a breath, we can feel the rib cage slightly opening. Coming widthwise, kind of like a book opening the scroll. Now for some of you, you might just check this as we went down in length, now we're coming up here, all of a sudden you might be gripping in your jaw again. Or you might be in your head thinking and your eyes are getting tight, or your shoulders are lifting up. So it's really this ongoing process of we're really allowing ourselves to come into harmony with the energy field of the planet. What is that? That's gravity. Coming into harmony with gravity. And gravity is 24/7. And it's a great partner to ally with. Keeps us here, keeps us solid. And if you don't think that gravity is winning, you can look at a picture of yourself 10 years ago. Just be settled, that's for everything. Shoulders are even and our head's on straight. Now in the sense of width, see if you can bring your attention to your clothing. Can you feel your clothing? Pants, skirt, shirts, jackets next to your body. And then if we extend out even further, extend out into the room. For example, in where I am, there's flowers. They're living flowers. And I'm feeling those flowers. They're a living organism that I'm sharing the space with. Or maybe the wooden table that my computer's on, and that wooden table came from a tree. Can I feel its life essence? So in the horizontal space, we're connecting and we're with others. We're also making boundaries. Maybe there's some people we want very close, others we want to have maybe at a larger boundary. And let's really extend that boundary now. And I'd like you to include a loved one that's not in the room right now. So from width, you're really widening yourself and making yourself large this way, your energetic field, and you include that person or persons. Now we'll come into depth. And we find it always very useful to begin in your back body because so many senses are in front. There's kind of like I'm getting ahead, I'm leaning ahead. We're holding all of our machines, handheld machines, computers in front. So there's this. So let's take a moment and settle back and into ourselves. Let's say there's not a rush right now. We're settling back and into ourselves. And we're remembering, again, as we go through this, just check the teeth. Are you biting down? Did your breath come up? Are you lifting up from your feet? Your feet are still there. Good. And can you feel the backs of your legs and your heels? Can you feel those long muscles next to the spine? They run parallel to the spine. Can you feel, sense, or even imagine them? Space between your shoulder blades. Sometimes it's very useful for me to think of a big dinosaur tail. Like those big dinosaurs have those big tails that went back, and I can rest back into that tail. So back here is our history, our teachers, our competencies, all the experiences we've had that have brought us to this moment. Those primary caregivers that brought us life that are at our back. What is at your back? Now from that back, travel through the torso with your attention. So you've gone through that dark space where all those organs are. And now you're coming out and opening your heart center. Open your belly center. So in depth, we can say we're historical beings. Our history is always with us. We only live in this present moment. And we're extending out to the best possible future for ourselves, for our loved ones. Put your left thumb in your belly button and let the left palm rest. And right at the center of that palm is approximately where your center of gravity is. Feel the sensation of your hand there. Feel the sensation of your lower belly, the hand. That can help you drop your attention to your center of gravity. So drop your hand and keep your attention dropped. So I can be in this room, I can be with all of you virtually, and still be connected to my center of gravity. The great contemplative traditions have called this our hara, or kantian, or kath, place of action, place of intuition, place of when the energy of the universe comes in. This is where it comes into, and this is the place we can hold it and distribute it. Now put your hand at your heart center. Feel your hand against your chest, feel your chest against your hand. These are the big pumps. Your heart, your lungs. Drop your hand and be at your heart center. This is the place of compassion, empathy, goodwill, a full-heartedness. Grounded compassion. Now let's just touch at between the eyebrows. And not so much you're thinking there, but again, by touching it, it's a little bit easier to feel there. Now drop the hand. And let's say this is the center of long horizons of time, as long as eternity. This is the center of clear perception, a clear view. Thymus gland, thyroid gland, pineal gland. We have the skillful action, the center of skillful action, the center of grounded compassion, the center of pragmatic wisdom. So go inside and align all those. And then however you think of it, whatever metaphor, turn on the switch, turn the dial, push the button, and light all of those up. You're ready for skillful action. You have an open heart, and you're allowing very practical, pragmatic wisdom to guide you. Now I want you to speak a commitment, one commitment in your life to yourself in this big time of change, big historical moment that we're in. You say, I am a commitment to. Say that to yourself as you feel yourself present, open, and connected. Now put your left foot forward, your right foot back. You'll have space between the width, your left foot and your right foot, a little bit like being on tracks, like a railroad track. They're not real close together. And the left foot is maybe a foot, half foot in front of the other one. So now that we're in the present, open, and connected through length, width, and depth, we're going to move from here. And let's just start by moving our center forward. Move it forward, weight to the front foot, and then back. Forward, and then back. Feel how the back foot is full. Empty the back foot, fill the front foot. Empty the front foot, feel the back foot. Forward. So we're training our nervous system, our spirit, to be able to stay present, open, and connected, stay centered while we're in movement. Walking from one conversation to the next, from our car to the office, going to pick up the children. Let's stop there. Put your right foot forward and your left foot back. And then moving forward, filling the front foot, emptying the front foot, filling the back foot. Sometimes this practice is very useful just to touch your center of gravity. I have both hands on my center of gravity here. And hold. Left foot forward, right back. Now we're going to do another movement practice, which is called rowing, funatori in the Japanese arts. If you just watch for a minute, as my hips go forward, my hands go forward, like I'm standing rowing. Many of you have seen that, parts of the world where people row standing up. As I go back, the hands and hips go back. They go forward together, and they come back together. Forward. Everybody relax your chin and jaw. Let your breath drop. Your arms are just swinging. Forward, back. Now hold for a minute And watch what we're practicing here is our hands are out, that I'm not trying to row this way. I'm not trying to rely on this shoulder girdle for strength. I'm really relying on my center, both my biological, physical, somatic center, but also my center of my purpose, my intent, the commitment that you just said. So when this is here, they all come together. Let's do it again. Hands are out and back and forward and back, forward and back, forward and back. Remember, emptying the back foot, filling the front foot. And hold. So what I'm going to say at some point, I'm going to have you I'm going to say change. Your right foot will come right next to your front foot, then your left foot will go back. So basically, we can just do that together. Let's just have our hands here. Bring your right foot next to your left foot and your left foot back. Left foot forward, right foot back. You're not stepping, you're just being in one place. Yes, beautiful. So left foot forward, hands out, and rowing. You're rowing for your commitment. You're rowing for those that aren't able to row. We can row for clean water, clean air. If you coordinate with me, because when I say change, we'll all change together. And change your feet. Shoulders are relaxed, your breath is relaxed. And change. Engage your breath. Engage your hips and legs. Don't try to do it right. Just be centered. And change. And change. Every time. And hold. Let's just let our arms come to our side. And let's just feel for a moment. If your breath picked up, that's fine. Just let it run. Feel where more life has come into your shape. And just noticing that. Good. Let's take a wide stance here. You have a wider stance. And what we're going to do in a moment is we're going to bend down with our hands like this, as if you're scooping up some earth. We're going to come up, put it into our belly center, and just vibrate it in. So the idea is taking earth energy, structure, ground, beingness, and bringing it into us. So let's go way down, bending your knees way down. Scoop up that earth, in breath, put it in your belly, and vibrate it in. Right hand on the belly, left hand on the top of the right hand. So begin as you're in your morning, afternoon, evening, building that structure. And again, deep breath, in breath, bring it in. And see if that vibration starts to move through your whole body. Your connection with the planet. Your connection with the ground of being. Your connection with a basic home. And again, in breath, scooping up at your belly and massaging it in. Your tongue's relaxed. Knees are slightly bent. Release, feet together. And again, let's just take a moment to feel being with that core primal life energy that's moving through us. Now what we're going to do, watch for a moment, we're going to engage with the heaven element or air element, fluidity, space, something that is flowing. And we'll do it this way. In the in-breath, we'll take heaven energy, we'll bring it right down to our center line, and then begin to shake that into us. So we're going to get this energy that's up here.
Information about where we are this outbreak and some of the measures.
And shaking it in. In-breath over your head and bring it down your spine into your center of gravity. And another time, in-breath, your out-breath and down. Let your arms come to your side. And again, let's just feel here for a moment. This notion of stopping right now and widening our awareness, feeling what is its own meditation. You might find a narrative that comes up or a story, or you drift off or associate something else. Just come back to the life energy moving through you. Now I'd like everybody to extend your fingers like this. Fingers are extended. And I want you to point that extension down, just as if the energy was coming out of your fingertips and really coming right down to the earth. And we'll think of this shape that we have right now is a shape of gratefulness to the earth, a prayer of gratefulness and thankfulness to the earth. We just have to think of anything we've ever eaten or drank has come from the earth. And where we are up here in the ranch in Petaluma, the green grasses, the flowers, the new leaves on the California oaks, the stones, the rabbits, the four-leggeds, those that have the feathered ones, the thin ones. Now let's come up here this way, extending your fingertips, looking up and giving thanks to the heavens, the waters, warmth, light, full moons, our neighborhood. Let's come down here, extend our hands out. And give thanks to people. Think of a person or persons you want to give thanks to. And this is a moment we can stretch ourselves. We can thank our worst friend. We can thank our best enemy. Imagine them, see them, say their name. Let your heart go to them. Let them come into your heart. And now right hand on your belly, left hand on your heart center. And now remember your purpose. What is it that you're about? What is it, the commitment that you're living or embodying? Feel that in your shape of your foot on the floor, your hands on your centers. Now let's put our left foot forward. We'll have that space between the legs. We're going to take this extension and we're going to extend out this way and all together. What do you say? There's over 500 of us. Let's give thanks to all those first responders that during this time of this contagion, this plague, that they're out there in the front lines, and all the healthcare workers. Even despite a paucity of equipment that they're working with, they're really putting themselves on the line. Let's send positive energy to those that have the virus and are suffering. Let's send energy, positive energy to those that have lost loved ones. Hands down. Again, let's just stop and feel ourselves individually as a collective body right now, and the collectives that you're in. If you wish, take a seat. What a happy feeling for me to see all these people that I know and see your faces and your aliveness. Thank you for being here. So we're in this historical moment, this historical time. There's a few things that I remember in it, is that those that are in esoteric healing arts, alternative healers, curanderos, shamans, they say that there's no disease and no sickness, there's only healing crisis. And that in really very strong respect for those that are really dealing with this directly, we can also hold this as a momentous time in which healing is going on for us individually and collectively and as a civilization. And when this kind of situation occurs for us as a threat, or even those moments where we have perceived threats, what will come to the foreground is our historical way that we have learned how to deal with danger or threats, our lack of safety. And those practices, those strategies, over time have really become deeply embodied in us. At SI, at Strozzi Institute, we call these our conditioned tendencies. So, we are social beings. We live among people and other living things. We're linguistic beings. We have language. We have language in which we can plan, we can reflect, and we can build and create together. We're biological beings. We have bodies, and we're historical beings. And as I was saying, part of this history that we have is a well-honed strategy and tactics that have allowed us basically to thrive and adapt and to come to this very moment right here. And, strategies for survival adaptability in a changing environment is a foundational description of intelligence. So these conditioned tendencies that we have are really an intelligent way of dealing with and taking care of the moments in which that we're in front of right now. And one of the powers, this is something that psychology and philosophy has known for a while, but what we know in the discourse of somatics, the discipline of somatics embodiment, is that history actually lives in our cells. It lives in the way organs correspond to each other. It lives in how we contract or how we extend. It lives in our ligaments and our tendons. It lives in our blood flow. It lives of how we pool our energy really tight or how we open it up more. So the value of seeing it this way is that I might be in a position like my shoulders are up like this. It's really a sign of fear. I'm protecting my jugular vein. We know that this is pretty universal. And in my mind, I might go, no, I don't feel afraid, but this shape will predispose me to fear. It'll predispose me to fear. If I'm up like this and I'm going, no, I'm fine, I'll go on like this. If I notice my body, I have the opportunity to go, oh, let me drop them. Let me drop my shoulders. So this history of long-term practices of building strategies and tactics for survival and adaptability in this constantly changing environment has brought us actually to this moment that we are now. Individuals have this, teams have this, companies have this, organizations have CTs, and nations have CTs. What we see in our country, what I mean by our country, I know some of you are from different countries, in America, this is also seen in other places too, but what arises in the CT is the metaphor of war. We're at war with this thing. We're at battle with this thing. This is combat. We have to destroy the enemy. I want to put forth that these are really old-fashioned and fatigued and actually useless metaphors to have. And that the whole notion that we're going to come into this fighting position, and which could mean like I'm clenching my fist, I'm rounding my shoulders, I'm coming up for combat and battle, is actually degrading my immune system. Because what I'm doing is that I'm holding on to, I'm contracting. Our cells will only be contracting, or they'll be firing, or they'll be relaxed. If I'm constantly firing in this way, it leads to fatigue. It leads to wearing myself down. It leads to listlessness and tiredness. If I'm able to see that I'm like this and holding and drop it, then I'm actually being able to manage and conserve and being able to direct my energy in a different kind of way. So what we want to do is that when we're connected to the news of this, as I heard a friend say, King COVID or Queen COVID, that what we do is that we watch what happens to our body. Do we start to tense up? We go out into the world and we want to keep that 6 feet of distance. We want to be washing our hands all the time. But watch what happens to your body. Watch how you might start to hold your breath, where you're starting to tighten maybe in your anal sphincter muscle, where your toes start to grip. These are all signs that your conditioned tendency, this strategy for living and adaptability, has come to the foreground and is moving forward. And, you know, the ways to look at it are the things that you're very familiar with, that, you know, there's those of us in those moments where we fight. Now, fight's a big word, but fight could actually just be a little bit like this. If you're sitting, do this with me for a moment. Just as an inch, lean yourself forward and then come back. Something's happening, you're just going to lean into them. Yeah. So there's flight. Flight looks like I'm on the plains of the Serengeti and I'm sprinting as fast as I can. We've all been there at some time or another, but flight could be just move an inch back. I'm moving out of the conversation. I'm moving out of the danger zone. My fear has brought me to this place. It could be freeze. Let's do this. Take your breath, however you're breathing now, bring it down to 5%. You're hardly breathing at all. Bring your shoulders in. Squeeze your legs in. If I hold very still, if I don't make a move, I won't be a target for some aggression, some sickness, some attack. And now release. Some of us have a proclivity to disassociate. However you're sitting there, think of something or someone a long ways away. Start to plan your dinner. Start to plan how you're going to catch up with all these emails or what's going to happen to my economy when I'm not working. Another month of sheltering in place. We disassociate. We can leave our bodies into a fully technicolor, filled in story about a disastrous future. Now let's come back. Could be also a fantasy of a good future, but in any case, we're not here. Some of us under these kind of threats, we appease. So let's put on a happy face. I mean, big happy face might be a big smile, but just kind of thinking like, oh, I'm just going to put on a happy face and inside of that threat will be okay. And I kind of do this spiritual bypass and it'll all be fine. Feel that shape inside of yourself. So what I'm suggesting here is that if you have a human nervous system, if you have a human shape, you are historical. And when something comes to you as a threat, either real or perceived, this history will arise. It'll rise up. And if we're not paying attention to it, it'll take over. And that history in its action is really not present to the moment. It's not connected to greater concerns. And it's really squeezed down any possibilities, not so open. We can feel that in our bodies. You know, for example, I moved for many years, probably till I was about 16, once a year, sometimes twice a year. I was always a new kid in the neighborhoods. I was in a working class family. And really, I had to monitor all these other young men like me, some a little bit younger, some age, some older. And everybody's like, who's the big dog around? And how do you do this? So I learned, first of all, to go, if I engaged the big dog, I'd be smothered. If I withdrew too much, I would be a target. But when threat came at me, or danger came at me, what I learned to do is I learned to set and then defend myself. I didn't run away. I didn't try to make happy. I learned that through the conditions, the social conditions of my time as a white male in a working class environment. And over time, that became part of who I am. And it lives for a while in us. So it's really a very powerful and affirmative thing to do, to become aware of, bring our awareness to go, as I move through time, this Richard may arise, or this Lisa, or this Marion, or this Rusty, or this Stephanie may arise. And when she arises, is it possible to go, oh, hello, here you are. And what I'm going to do is say, thank you for coming here because you've served me for so long. I want you to feel acknowledged, and you have a space here, but not at the head of the table. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a full breath. I'm going to drop my shoulders. You can go down at the end of the table, and I will be at the head of the table, or I will author this, or I will drive this vehicle. And sometimes even having that conversation internally can be very useful. Just to say, there you are again. There you are again, Sally. There you are again, Bill. There you are, and thank you for being here. You've taken care of me. I appreciate that very much. And what's going to happen is that I'm going to ask you to just take a seat aside. You're in my house. I'll call you when I need you, but I'm going to make the choices now. So what we often see is that when people start to become aware of their conditioned tendency, we become critical of him, or we become critical of her. Oh, there you are again. There's nothing to be defensive about, nothing to fight, and there you are. Why can't you just open your heart here and listen to the other person's concerns? Oh, there you are, really trying to be sweet and nice when really you feel resentful. It's what's happening. So, and I'm resentful for this coming up again. And that is a real common thing when we become very familiar and literate with our CT, conditioned tendency, is that we become critical or non-acknowledging of it. What we know is that when we do that, it just strengthens it. It gives it more life. It'll fight back. In basics, the line it'll say is, hold on. I've taken care of you through your whole life. You're asking me to step aside. That's not a good move, because now you're in danger. Now you're in threat, and something untoward will happen to you. And then this dialogue begins. There's this tension that happens between them, that they're fighting, interlocking, and there you are in this internalized fight with yourself. So what we have there's a term in Aikido that's called blending. And blending means in the martial arts, you join the attacker's energy. You don't run from it. You don't try to talk him out of it necessarily. You don't push against it. You don't try to destroy it. You actually use that energy to lead the attack. So then the aggression itself can be neutralized without neutralizing the person, without hurting the person. This is a beautiful, beautiful concept. In Japanese, it's a musubi. And basically, generally that means knot. And what it means is you tie into your partner, you join them. In conversational speak, we could say you authenticate it, you legitimatize it. You see that it has a story about reality. You say, you get, oh, I see that that's how you form your reality. I don't form my reality that way, but I see that's how you form your reality. And how can we actually get deeper into this conversation by ABC 1, 2, 3? In other words, you begin to lead the conversation so perhaps other possibilities can open. On the somatic level, as I've said before, it could be simply dropping your shoulders, taking a deep breath, coming into my back, dropping my attention down instead of all this flurry of thought and considering and lamenting and revenge and planning. And I want to take a moment here and expand this conversation out into COVID-19, CV-19, and say that there's a science writer named Richard Spencer, and he's written a number of nonfiction, fiction books, and even some screenplays about viruses and epidemics for decades. And one of the observations that he's made is that viruses will often be released when there's a radical upset in the ecological balance. Viruses will often be released when there's a radical upset in the ecological balance, especially in savannas and tropical rainforest. We all know that we're creating an ecological balance. We are doing that. Humans are doing that. Is it possible that in some way we've actually invited this virus into our being? Are we now codependent with it by the way that we have enacted into the environment? And if that's the case, how do we actually blend with this virus? And let me suggest that one of the ways that we could possibly blend is consider a guide. Don't get me wrong, wash your hands, stay 6 foot away, drink a lot of liquids, eat well, enjoy the refuge of sheltering in place, absolutely. And is there another way that we can expand our metaphor from the metaphor of violence? And that's an infection. Like CV19, language can be an infection. It can come inside of us and burrow inside of us and say that what we have to do is then I'll go to war. But we can actually open up to this virus as a guide for the healing of the planet, for the healing of the civilization, so our civilizations, so to speak. And every time I say civilization, I think of when Gandhi was asked, what do you think of Western civilization? He said, I think it's a good idea. Anyway, this notion that we can open up to and say, what is it that we have to learn here? What is it we have to learn about the violence or damage or aggression that we are importing onto others, into ourselves, into the ecology, into other animals, how we're treating all of them with the relentless cruelty that can happen in this world. So inside of that, what I'm saying here is this notion that there's a history that's being enacted. And at a very personal level, we feel it in our body. At another level, we can look even wider and going, well, this nation has a history. That if we feel confronted or we have to defend something, that we're going to go at war with it. And also that there's a history that a virus is a living organism, vital, that has its own place in the universe, and can it be a teacher to us at this time? So we did a centering practice. This is how we bring ourselves back. This is how we self-collect. Once we self-collect, we can extend our energy and going, where's the energy coming from? Instead of fighting it, fleeing it, running from it, we can actually blend with it. We can actually authenticate it, join it from a centered place and say, how can I help understand you? How do we come in right relationship with, in myself, in my communities, and then outward to the farthest reaches of the universe. So let me stop right there and let me open it up and see if there's any questions. We'll just take a few, and then I have a poem I'd like to read to you.
I have a question. Thank you so much, Richard, for this practice, by the way, both the experiential and the lecture. It's really valuable and a pleasure to be here with everybody. I have two questions, but the first one I'll make it brief. It's around blending, and if it can make sense to conceive of blending as a kind of embodied empathy? Like, are we stepping into the experience of the other? And I'm seeing you nod, so I'll take it as a yes, possibly. Okay.
Yes, yes, the notion that we can allow ourselves to feel deeply into the other's history, set of concerns, they're come from. Yes.
And just when you were discussing this conditioned tendency around fighting and battling and the hunching, I identify a lot with that on a personal level. And something that just came to me was I was watching some Muay Thai fighters from a distance in the park yesterday. And I was realizing like things that I associate with it, like just being off in posture, that those are things they inhabit as they're fighting. And I'm just wondering about what is an alternative to that? What does it look like to be, like, as someone mentioned in the chat, a warrior for peace and love? What does it look like in the body to inhabit the strength without the bracing and the contracting? Yeah, if you could share something around that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. What I would like to share about that is the practice we did in the beginning about fully coming into our length, our width, our depth, coming from an organizing principle is really the foundation. So our hands aren't signaling this, our hands are signaling this, an openness. That while the other, the opponent, the other person is in front of us, I'm feeling my back. So I'm not leaning into them. I'm feeling my back. And as I extend my energy towards them, I'm actually feeling that in an inclusive way. So that's really the postures that we want to, the shape that we want to inhabit, as well as a deep rhythmic breath. And then a view, an embodied view that this is not an other. There's a great little line in the Upanishads. It says, where there's the other, there's fear. Distinct from, at some deep level, at some level of awakening, we go, I am not separate. There's not a subject and then an object. I am deeply connected there. You're welcome.
We have two questions that are inside of our chat. One is from Marian, and she asks, how do you do the centering practice with those with mobile disabilities? And the second question is from Lynn SK, around how to properly belly breathe.
The first one is that if we have a lack of mobility, is that even lying down, you can do the centering practice. You can, the width that's there and the depth that's there. You can connect with your breath. So all of these practices can be done lying down, sitting, lying on your back, lying on your front. And so Lunas, would you tell me the second question of that?
The second question is from Lynn, and it's how do you belly breathe?
Yes, how do you belly breathe? Good. A start is this. You put your hand on your lower abdomen, and then when you breathe in, if you're pretty relaxed, what you'll feel is the stomach going out. Then as you exhale, it'll go in. Breathe in, it'll go out. Exhale, it'll go in. For some, that'll be a big motion. For others, that'll be a smaller motion. And that's done because it's a diaphragm effect. And it's also possible that if we are so tense or so armored that it's actually difficult to drop our breath. And one way to really add some accelerant to that belly breathing is get some form of body work, and tell your body worker that I want to breathe lower in my body. Can you work on my diaphragm? Yes.
We also have a question from Chantel. What is the difference between noticing versus allowing to feel what you are feeling without denying or suppressing?
Let me see if I understand that question. Is that when we notice something, is that we're trained to notice it and then to immediately contain it in a rational, logical, analytical box. Oh, I hear my refrigerator moving. Well, that's a refrigerator that has food in it. Now I'm already into what I'm going to make for lunch. To notice something is that I noticed that the sound came from my ear. The rest was a story. Not that we don't have stories and we don't need stories, but the rest was a story. I can hear that and see how that sound is actually affecting my body instead of running off into a story about it.
Great. I noticed that Monica Eldon has her hand up inside the chat. Monica, do you want to ask your question?
Yes, thank you so much. Richard, I'm so struck by the Aikido practice that you're describing of using the energy of the attacker in a different way rather than fighting against it. And I notice this inner battle right now between the conditioned response of wanting to, in fear of wanting to go into action right away and help everybody I can help and the being part of grounding. And those two parts of me are in battle, and it's exhausting, just like you're talking about. So I don't quite have access, though I have many tools of how to do what you're talking about, of how to stop fighting those inner energies.
Let me thank you for that. I think that we can all recognize that at some degree or level in ourselves. But you know, you're in many ways ahead of the game because you're already noticing that there's a battle, and you're more than that. You're even noticing that it's fatiguing you, and that it can be very useful to blend with the fatigue. Because what we can think of that is that's an informant to you. And that's telling you something as a way to go, I'm here to take care of you. Can you pay attention that you're fatiguing me or tiring me out? And that has the possibility of moving you into a more, I appreciate the action you want to take. I endorse it and support it, but we want to do it from a centered place. Yeah.
So Richard, I know that we're close to time, and it seems as though we have one more question before you move into a poem. If you are willing to take that last question.
Yes, we'll do one question and I'll read this poem.
It appears that Arvia, I hope I'm saying your name properly.
Yes, I'm Aria. Thank you so much. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, everyone, for facilitating and being part of this community. My question is, one of the things I'm struggling most with right now is feeling like I don't know what my purpose is right now. And as soon as it's asked, I feel completely overwhelmed. And so I'm wondering if you have any recommendations for how to feel into that purpose, and if that's something that something to be asked moment by moment, day by day, or if I should really feel for something that I can hold on to, given that I already have a tendency to feel pretty scattered.
Mm-hmm. Why is that question important to you, Ari? Why is purpose important to you?
Yeah, I feel a need for an anchor for something to come back to when I'm, when I'm going through all the intensity of emotions, nervous system, extremes. And, I'm also staying at my mom's house. I'm sleeping in my childhood bedroom. So like something to come back to really somatically, something to really feel organized around, and something to also keep me from, and that really feels from the body, not an intellectual commitment that makes me feel like everything, I don't know, that I should be taking on everything at once. So just something really to come back to.
Yes. I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
And what I'd like you to do is to just give first thought, best thought.
Okay.
And so what I'm going to ask you to do is really collect yourself, center yourself.
Okay.
And then when you're there, just nod your head. Then I'll ask the question. At the end of your day, when people are at your memorial, what is the one thing you want them to say about you? She was...
First that, best that, right?
Right.
Oh, it came to me was kind.
Let me suggest that you say your purpose. You can start by going, my purpose is to be kind. My purpose is kindness. Now, we're right at the end. This is a big question you're asking.
Yeah.
And that I think can open the door. So your first thing is you're going, you don't want people to put on your gravestone, she was unkind. You want them to say she was a kind person. And every time you say that, and when you said it before, you light up.
Mm.
So I would really let yourself feel into that impulse that came through you in that moment.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to complete here, and I'm going to read a poem. We read poems because, as T.S. Eliot said, poems are a raid on the inarticulate. You see, poems help us open that door, what psychology calls the unconscious, to the depths of herself. And this is by Pablo Neruda, a Latin poet, and it's called Keeping Quiet. And the poet says this, Keeping Quiet by Pablo Neruda. Now we will count to 12 and we will all keep still. Now we will count to 12 and we will all be still. For once on the face of the earth, let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. It would be an exotic moment, without rush, without engines. We would be all together in a sudden strangeness. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the men gathering salt would look at his hurt hands. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victory with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade, doing nothing. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it is about. I want no truck with death. If we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt the sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. Perhaps the earth can teach us. Perhaps the earth can teach us. And when everyone seems dead and later proves to be alive, perhaps the earth can teach us as when everyone seems dead and later proves to be alive. Now I'll count to 12 and you keep quiet and I will go. So as we say at Strozzi Institute, everybody take it easy, but take it. Wash your hands, 6 feet distance, and listen to the guide. Listen to the guide. So long.